Hey folks, welcome to the Mike Lopez TV Show. I'm your host, ACMike. We'll bring you all things Atlantic City and our local region, politics, sports, dining, entertainment, and so much more. Our guest for today is Evan Sanchez, co-founder of Authentic City Partners. So stick around, we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the show. Let's get started with our first guest for today, Evan Sanchez, co-founder, Authentic City Partners. Evan, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you, Mike.
Appreciate you. Been wanting to get you on for some time. This guy has a story to tell, and we're going to tell it today, folks, and I hope you enjoy it. Evan, let's let the listener and the, because I will use this on my radio show as well, just let you know that, with our partnership. Let the audience know a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Evan Sanchez. I was born in Atlantic City. I grew up in Pleasantville, and I was off to New York City to go to school, start business, and then in 2015, felt the calling to come back home. My wife and I are both from the area, and we felt like there was an opportunity for us to be helpful. We're big, show up and be helpful people. It was a tough time. I mean, I know you were here, Mike. You remember that. Casinos had closed. There was talk of a knockout punch, that this was it, and I think that there's been times in Atlantic City's history before we felt like, let's go home and see what's happening and what we can do to be helpful.
And thank God that you did, and we'll get into that. So yeah, about 2013, 14, 15, we have over 5 casinos closed. Others talking about moving out and whatnot. The thousands and thousands of folks that lost their jobs. Very, very, very tough time for anything to move forward and progress. But one of the things we spoke about prior, and we have in the past as well, is being positive, being proactive. Restorative narrative, so to speak. So, and I think that was very important. And I think that that's a big part of your story and what you do. You had some, we talked about the loop. I wanted to jump back. I remember a project and some work being done by Rutgers University. And I've heard you speak on this before. I've actually even heard Pat Fasano mention it coming from your mouth to me and whatnot. Talk about that a little bit, what was going on at that time, if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that a couple of things. There was this narrative of, this is it, times are really bad, it's not going to get better. And for me, coming back to my hometown and really going on a listening tour, I got to meet a lot of different people. I got to meet you, Mike. I got to meet people like Elizabeth Taranick, who was the planning director for the city. I got to meet people like Joyce Hagan, people that were doing great things in the city, great people doing great things that their stories weren't really getting out necessarily, but good work was being done. And so in particular, with what Elizabeth was doing at the time, she was doing these sort of noontime talks, and one of them was presenting what was called the downtown loop. So she had worked with some Rutgers, I think, planning students to create an idea to look at the beach blocks, really between resorts to Claridge, sort of the heart of the city, right? The central business district, the beach blocks, and say, like, what's there, what could be there, and how could we get from where we are to, kind of this grand vision. And it was big. I mean, it was big. I don't know how many blocks that is, maybe 10 blocks or something like that, 10, 12 blocks. And, I saw that and I said, okay, too big, too grand maybe, but if you shrink it down, you start small, maybe you can create something that's scalable. And that's kind of like the start of what now we call the Orange Loop, but at the time really was about a Tennessee Avenue transformation. It was about starting small and committing to progress, not, transformation overnight, but progress little by little with a block that had been beaten down but had a great history. And in those beach blocks right then, 2015, you had the Pick,
right?
You had the pub, the OG, the pub, the Irish pub, and Kathy, who's been a legend and done her thing for decades. So those beach block bars were there. They were still doing their thing. Again, in spite of everything else, they were still there. Right. And there was an opportunity to build off of that, to say, hey, let's take some of these vacant buildings, some of these beaten down beach blocks, which had been laid out in the downtown loop plan that Elizabeth presented, and, slim it down,
right?
But get started. Don't let the plan just sit on the shelf, which has happened in Atlantic City so many times, but say, hey, can we take a nugget of this and start to execute. And that's what we started to kind of get to 2015 into 2016.
And developers develop, so we'll get there as well. With that being said, the OG, Kathy, and the pick, although that road, and I'll be quite frank, that when I say that road, Tennessee Avenue, folks, it was a rough place to go. It was a rough place to walk, even for an ex-corrections officer or whatnot. And my point in being that those two properties, people were still visiting, loved it.
Absolutely.
And to this day, I mean, I know since then the Pick has closed down in King's Pub, and we'll talk about that down the road as well. But you saw this, you envisioned this, and I have to be honest. And I was speaking to Evan prior to the show, and I'm not ashamed to say this. I would be like, oh my gosh, these guys really, because I was dealing with City Hall myself a little bit, some of the work I was doing with Don Guardian at the time, and I was like, man, these guys, you must be crazy. You think Tennessee Avenue, but it's your money. You have an idea. They're creative developers. It's not going to happen like that. Talk to us about that, because I know there was some, I don't want to say I was giving pushback, but I was like, holy smokes, it's different.
I think there was a reasonable skepticism, we'll say, Mike. I think very reasonable skepticism, and I think, rightfully so. I think there's sometimes where people come into town and they have really big vision, big promises, and they're not able to deliver. And I think for us, we took a different tact. And my business partner Zenith and Mark, we really said, we're not going to shoot for the moon here. We're really going to be realistic about what we can commit to, and commit to it. And I think that was a little bit different angle of approach. Now, we were going into the belly of the beast. This area was the dead zone. I mean, this was explicitly called the dead zone. You can go back and look at the tape, and Councilman Shabazz, and Don, and other folks at the time. I mean, there was, again, reasonable skepticism to go into one of the toughest blocks at the time and say, if we start small and we work collaboratively, we can build something, create something, a thing, a destination, and then kind of let it go. But yeah, again, we can now say, hey, you play the tape out, okay. Right. But in 2015, when we were having the initial conversations. Yeah.
And to some of those folks that you mentioned, to their credit, you did the project, you and the team, but they stuck with it. Let's go it. Let's move along with 100%. This. These guys are here and gals are here to do something specifically that's going to be something good for the city. And I love the fact that you say this, because I've seen it so many times in the city. So has many others as well. Again, big project, big ideas, $3 billion, a few $100 million, and then nothing happens. It's great. Studies go on. This goes on. No, you guys started purchasing properties. Talk to us about that when they started, going through and seeing these. And Evan, quite frankly, when you go behind walls sometimes, it's not what you want to see. It just adds on to what the project may be.
Yeah, and I think for Zenith and me, ignorance is bliss to some degree. So, Mark had a background in real estate and in financing and things like that. For Zenith and me, we're kind of coming into this as really entrepreneurs, and sort of again, this is our hometown, and we want to, figure this out. But I think we're, doers do, and people always are like, well, how did you learn this or that? And you just learn on the job, So I think for us coming into it, not knowing was actually really helpful. Not knowing necessarily what you're going to find behind the walls and how much that's going to then cost or time it's going to take or any of that. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, because I don't know if I would have done it, to be honest with you. But I think that we were really committed to, again, small scale. So when we started to look at properties, Mark had already had a couple of properties on Tennessee Avenue that were kind of I think waiting to be developed. And so when we all kind of connected, it was all right, well, what other buildings do we need to acquire? What concepts are sort of those foundational concepts? What's missing in the city? How can we bring those concepts here? And to be totally honest with you, we also tried to recruit at the time. It wasn't like we didn't do business development. We tried to do business development, but again, we got a lot of the I don't know, kind of reasonably so. So we then said, all right, well, the folks that first said yes, the first outsiders that said yes, were Kathy and Allie from the Leadership Studio. And so there's always this affinity there for them that they were the first new business, and they opened a nonprofit yoga studio on Tennessee Avenue in 2017, and they said yes to us, and they made a commitment, and they'd already been working in the city. They'd already been doing good work in the city already in the public parks, and they said, we want a permanent home in Atlantic City. We should be on Tennessee Avenue. And so when we bought, for us buying the first property at 161 South Tennessee Avenue, which is now the Leadership Building with the Leadership Studio on the ground floor, that's to me, that was such a validation point. And again, at that time, to make that kind of commitment to, not to us, but to the city of Atlantic City, to be a change agent, to come in and do what they do, that's something I'll never forget.
Evan, and if you would, please, talk to our audience a little bit about what the Leadership's Grid. One of the first places that it probably is the first where I took a yoga class.
Me too.
It was great, some meditation, and the fact that it was just a donation type base, but a beautiful layout. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the Leadership Studio is a 501c3 based in Atlantic City on Tennessee Avenue. They do yoga trainings, they do recovery trainings through yoga. They use yoga as a vehicle for leadership training. So, whether you practice on the mat or you don't, they're all about the yoga off the mat and really helping to develop leaders in the city of Atlantic City and to really harness what we already have and sort of build off of that. We know we have great people, great talent here. Their whole goal is to really help to elevate those people, to help them to become better leaders. That's really what they're doing at the Leadership Studio. Yoga is a part of it,
right,
but they do a lot that's off the mat that's really, really impactful for some of the people that are really struggling, the people that are really kind of coming through recovery and that process, right, and also for other people to say, hey, how can we help you to transform to the next level?
Right, and this is what I used it for. Had some friends that were suffering. My past place of employment working for the Atlantic County Department of Public Safety, fancy name for the jail. I, got to know a bunch of the guys, especially in Atlantic City as well, and I would direct them there once that opened, and then I took the walk in and I was blown away. Again, this was something that when I looked at it a year or two prior to that, it was like, this is what I would never have imagined it there, and the use that it had. Then you have the other four, Heyday, Made. Talk to us about what transpires after that. We got about 2 minutes in this segment, and then we could finish it off at the other side.
Yeah, so the sort of those foundational concepts. Heyday, there wasn't a coffee shop. There wasn't an independent coffee shop in the city of Atlantic City. That's crazy. So that's the stuff where you talk about, hey, these guys are crazy, they're going into this area, sure, but the beach blocks were the way that they were is really what was crazy, that we didn't have an independent coffee shop. So we said, all right, Z, Lauren, our co-founder, and me, okay, we'll do a coffee shop. We didn't know anything about coffee, but let's figure it out. Made, which was a really cool bean to bar chocolate concept that was sort of part of this foundational concept that came out of an Arteriors from the Arts Foundation, right, where you take over a space, you transform it with public art. That became Made, and then that was kind of like this cool Willy Wonka experience where you could see them making the chocolate and all that cool stuff. And then the beer hall, Tennessee Avenue Beer Hall, which again, you need a staple, 800-pound gorilla, foundational concept. Those were the four initial concepts.
Right, and folks, listen, stick around. We're going to be right back talking with Evan Sanchez. Hope you join us. Stay right where you're at. Welcome back to the show. Let's continue with our discussion with today's guest, Evan Sanchez, co-founder of Authentic City Partners. Evan, we were talking about the 800-pound gorilla out there on Tennessee Avenue Beer Hall. Great spot to be. Talk to us a little bit about that, how that was the center, but not at all.
Well, yeah, I think you need, again, a staple, and you need scale. So the Tennessee Avenue Beer Hall, the vision of that was always to be a place that people could gather inside and outside. Right. And that's one of the other things that we really wanted to take advantage of is outdoor space in the city of Atlantic City. You're on an island, you're on a beach block, you should be outside as much as you can in our opinion. So that outdoor space is really essential for what they do at the beer hall. Obviously, Chef Charles is an incredible chef, and he just opened up Chucktown the other day, or the last couple months. And just they build a basic, and I mean that in a very positive way, staple concept that's very approachable and that you can kind of grab onto. And again, brand it. Lean into Tennessee Avenue. Don't run away from it. Tennessee Avenue Beer Hall. Right. This is what we do. This is where we're at. Right. Come visit.
Love it. And I love the phrase you use, lean into it. And I'm jumping forward a little bit. One of the things that I always wondered about and thought of, and of course there was nothing there at the time, was getting the folks off the boardwalk into now, sure, which is the Loop. I mean, was that part of the thought process as well? I mean, and we'll jump back into this, but.
It was. So we talked about it as a reverse pier. You think about the beach blocks and you think about the boulevard, that's the boardwalk, and there's piers out into the ocean, but the beach blocks are basically piers off of that. Yeah. And so, people have been trained really not to leave the boardwalk. And you have to draw them off that, and you have to draw them with good concepts. And so we always knew that. And obviously, the Irish Pub has been able to do that. The Pick have been able to do that, but they're right at the mouth of the boardwalk. So how do you get the people to move a little bit farther? Right. That was a question, and I think we believed it was possible with good concepts that were concentrated together.
Right, and one of the concepts, the orange loop, it becomes a thing.
It becomes a thing.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the vision grows, right? So initially it was just a Tennessee Avenue transformation. We believed it could become a bigger thing, a scalable model, and that was always the hope, and that the downtown loop, you kind of just keep biting one block off at a time. So the orange loop really came to life when Bourré opened, and that's Pat Fasano's concept. Right. And Pat's a really talented developer. He's a great guy. He's also very talented.
He's been on the show too. Love the guy. He's got no energy.
Oh, yeah, no energy. Low energy guy. And he'd done it in Asbury Park, and he saw kind of what we were trying to do on Tennessee Avenue, and he was like, you know what? Like, in addition to buying some real estate right near where Stockton came into Atlantic City, he said, you know what? I'm going to come in here. I'm gonna show you guys how this is done. And he opened up Bourré. He bought a lot of real property there, and the loop became a thing as Pat came into the picture, and you're able to expand beyond Tennessee Avenue, take on to New York Avenue, and then those 3 beach blocks, Tennessee, St. James, and New York. The Orange Properties and Monopoly became what we now call the Orange Loop.
Right. And then you had some new additions to it. Some closed, some new. Anchor Rock Club. Talk about some of those new additions as well. And listen, Pat, I love you. Just joking. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. The guy is full of energy.
Yeah. He's, again, I don't even say what his age is, but if I have half the energy he has at his age, I'll be a happy guy. So diversification is really important. Right. This was never about a couple of people. This was always about a bigger vision, and to fill that vision, you need a lot of different people doing a lot of different things. And so, the folks at Anchor Rock are just amazing at what they do. It's an incredible live music venue, so needed in the city of Atlantic City. They did a beautiful restoration of the old Deja Vu with a really talented developer partner there, John Longacre, and then his team, Adam and Greg, just great people.
Great people.
And they're bringing in all kinds of acts. They have a diverse set of people. They're working with a lot of local folks. I love to see some of the stuff that they do, with people that are right here in Atlantic City. They'll bring acts from all over the place, but they'll also just feature people that are in Atlantic City and the surrounding area. And so, New York Avenue started to build out a little bit more, different concepts there. You have the first medical and then recreational dispensary, MPX. Is in the Bywater building right on New York Avenue next to Heyday. You have a young entrepreneur, Tiff Wilkinson at Side Pony, a print shop. I mean, you want to see a thriving neighborhood. Food and beverage, music, entertainment is a part of that, but there's got to be more to it. And you got to have housing there. You got to have all the different elements of a city, and we're trying to compress them into one little area.
Right, and when you talked about the Anchor Rock Club, I just remember back in the day, Deja Vu running around as a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, in and out, and that just being closed. And like, wow, this was a place where so many gathered, and now it's happening again. And to their credit, and to your credit as well, Evan, and the crew, we'll just touch on it for maybe a minute or so. COVID happens.
Sure.
And it just paused everything, and you continued, the group continued, we're going to go forward with this. It had to be a trying time financially, emotionally, physically. I mean, talk about that a little bit, the persistence.
Sure. I think that, again, these are black swan events. COVID was one of them where you cannot predict it, and you don't know what the impact is going to be or the duration of that impact. And so when it happened, and everything had to be closed in March, April 2020, and you just don't know what it means, right? You just know that, wow, this is not good. Yeah. We knew it wasn't Atlantic City only, right? And so I think sometimes there's things that hit Atlantic City that are really, really negative or can be really harmful. This hit everybody. Right. And so I think there was a sense of there's a shared concern, not just for Atlantic City, but it was a very trying time. We were in the midst of reopening Heyday at the time, which we did open at the end of 2020, again, when it was still very much the pandemic was pretty serious, and it was a tough time to open a business, but there was always a grit in this project. There was always a note. We know what we're getting into, even if we don't know, kind of thing, where this ain't going to be easy. Right. And COVID was just another opportunity to, I think, just show that grit, show the commitment to our city, show the commitment to the project, and to all the people that are involved in it, all the partners, all the other owners, all the stakeholders in general.
And I saw that approach. I saw that commitment is one of the things that I did during that time as well. And a few of my friends, they're like, listen, this is going on. It's going on all over the world.
Yeah.
Keep going forward, Mike. Hit the gas pedal. People encourage that way. And that's what you guys did. When I say you guys, the whole crew, I would go out there and see, it was continuing. It was still talked about. These things were happening. And it gives people, gave me inspiration to continue sharing, talking to people, doing the radio show, doing the TV show. Listen, we do have something special there. That 48 blocks are incredible. And like I said, a large part of it's for you and your crew. One of the things I always thought it was amazing to me, and I wasn't into that field, was the arts.
Yeah.
We talked about arterials a little bit. I'm jumping forward a little bit, but talk to us about the importance you have, but art, painting, Heather, those sort of folks that have transformed buildings and what we got going on in the city right now.
Yeah, you can't talk about the Orange Loop without talking about the arts and the impact of the arts in Atlantic City, and how generative the arts are, how powerful they are in creative process and inspiration. And we were talking before, the first Arteriors, which is an event where you take over a vacant space. The Atlantic City Arts Foundation takes over a vacant space. They put in artists. They transform that space for the short term. That's the plan. Right. It's then to be converted into something else. There's been 10 of those Arteriors over the last 8 years. 5 of them have been in the Orange Loop. And I think that speaks to, a desire for the arts to drive a lot of the change that's happening. We know that, the murals matter. You see them and you're like, wow, that's beautiful, or that's interesting, or that's whatever, and it makes you feel something and you want to be attracted to that. It's gravity. Live music is important. The guys at Anchor. These things matter for the livelihood of the city, for the livelihood of the Orange Loop. And so the story of the Loop and the story of the arts are kind of like blended into one, and a lot of artists live in the Loop. And so that's the other thing. Like, it's great for it to be a destination for people to come to. It's really important that people live there too.
That's right.
Really important that people live in the Loop and the city of Atlantic City, and more people bring more people, which brings more people. And a lot of the early people that have moved into the Loop are artists themselves, and they're creatives, and they're creating art in the Loop, and they're showing their friends, and that's how it works. That's happened in other places as well, like Asbury Park and everything, and that's been really, really positive for the city. And I was just talking to Kate from the Arts Foundation, the executive director. There's 103 murals that have been put up over the last 8 years through the Arts Foundation. 103.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
But you feel it.
It's a place to be. And again, for our listening and viewing audience, Evan, define Arteriors just a little, because I get questions all the time about it.
Yeah, so Arteriors, the gist of it is there is a vacant space that's in transition, so it's yet to be developed. You go in, you bring in many artists. I think the last one at the James on the boardwalk, which is the old Saltwater Taffy, has 15, 20 artists. They create in different spaces. They do these like art installations. They can be sculpture, they can be mural, they can be all the different formats, and then you just basically open that up to the public for free. So people can come and actually this one, we had over 350 people show up to the opening night, and again, that speaks to the energy that the Loop is generating, the energy that the arts are bringing, and the positivity. And that's something about you, Mike, is positivity is super powerful. Positivity is generative. That creates momentum in a positive direction, and it just keeps building and building and building. And that's been essential for whatever we've been able to accomplish to date in the Orange Loop.
And again, I appreciate you saying that there, but that's what it's about. Again, a restorative narrative. Something's broke. Let's figure out how we can fix it.
How do we tell our story? How do we really tell a unique Atlantic City story that's diverse, that's nuanced, that's rich, not just one thing, one thing, one thing. That doesn't work, and it hasn't worked, and it's not going to work.
Not going to work. So again, on the at the Loop, we got Cardinal. I mean, we got so much we could jump on.
Sure.
We don't have a whole lot of time, but talk to us a little bit about that and any large scale projects that are probably going to come in sometime in the near future.
Sure. So Cardinal opened in May of this year of 2023, and that's a partnership with Chef Michael Brennan to really, again, just keep upping the game. It's always about just improving, constant improvement, and there's going to be some natural turnover that happens within concepts, within neighborhoods, and I think Cardinal, again, just keeps moving us on that curve of just keep getting better, keep getting better, keep getting better. There's some we always follow a crawl, walk, run model. So there's now going to be some larger scale development that's happening. You know, Pat Fasano has a brand new building that's opening on St. James. It's beautiful, residential, 8 two-bedroom apartments that are gorgeous. We're in the midst of finishing up a project on Tennessee Avenue with 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartments. So there's more housing coming. We're working on townhomes on what now is Schultz Hill Boulevard, Westminster. The James itself will be developed into apartments and food and beverage on the boardwalk. There's going to be eventually some large-scale development on New York Avenue in those parking lots. Now, down the line, but there's a vision for what comes. Some of that's already in progress, and some of that will come down the pipeline. But more people, Mike, that's what's coming. More people living the loop, that's what's coming over the next 12, 24 months.
And couldn't ask for anything more than that. And we have about a minute, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. What happens at the loop can happen anywhere in Atlantic City. Talk to us about that a little bit, that maybe somebody can take a few blocks down the road. And it's happening, but maybe not on that scale yet.
I think that's exactly right. And the hope was that it could be inspiring to other people. Like, the goal was not like, oh, this is how the loop, and it's hoarded, it's our thing. It's like, hey, you start, you work collaboratively, you create some new businesses, you bring in good housing, and good begets good. So we love to see, people developing. We love to see more housing. We love to see new concepts. There's so much room to grow in the city of Atlantic City, and we hope that the loop is an inspiration for years to come.
Listen, and it's going to be, and I really believe what you're doing is inspirational to people, not just here in Atlantic City, the folks that come into town, because one of the things I see on Tennessee Avenue that I thought I would never see, and I don't say never quite often, was that interacting and people popping in and out, going to the different venues and spots, whether it's the Leadership Studio or the street over to the OG, so to speak. So, Evan Sanchez, I want to thank you for coming out. We have to continue this. We may have you back in the spring as well as on the radio show, brother. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming back in 2015, because it's been a huge success and a lot of work. Folks, thanks again to Evan Sanchez, Authentic City Partners, for taking the time to be our guest today. We'll be right back after this. Make sure you stay right where you're at. Hey folks, it's our belief here at the Mike Lopez TV Show that you, the viewers and our guests, bring the show to life. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining us today. To learn more about ACMike, go to acmikeNJ.com, on Facebook at ACMike, Mike Lopez, and LiveWorkPlayAC. You can catch me as well on Instagram at ACMikeNJ. If you enjoyed watching today's show, you can also listen to my radio show on 1400 WOND, 92.3 FM, WONDradio.com on the World Wide Web, Monday through Friday, noon till 2 p.m. Remember to always live, work, play AC, and I'll see you on the 48.